Okay, let's unpack this. Uh, it's a topic that, well, it's been swirling for years, hasn't it? Lots of theories, lots of attention,
Definitely.
and now some official updates on the Jeffrey Epstein case.
That's right. And for this deep dive, we're looking at reports that just came out July 7th, 2025,
Yeah.
from places like NPR, PBS, CNN Politics, The Times.
Okay.
And they're all focused on this new, it's just a two-page memo, actually.
It's 2 pages.
Yeah, from the Department of Justice and the FBI. It outlines what they found after what they're calling an exhaustive review of the Epstein file.
Exhaustive review. Okay, so our job today, really, is to try and cut through some of the noise surrounding this. Look at these specific findings and help you understand what this actually means for all those questions that have been hanging around for so long. Might be some surprises in here.
Could be. We're aiming for clarity on, well, a pretty complex story.
Right. So let's get into it. The core announcement. What did the DOJ and FBI actually say in this memo?
Well, this memo, it lays out three main conclusions pretty definitively. First, they did a, quote, systematic review, and their finding: no incriminating client list was discovered. Just not there.
No list. That's big news, considering, well, we'll get to that. What else?
Second, the review found, and again, this is their wording, no credible evidence that Epstein was blackmailing prominent people as part of his crimes.
No credible evidence of blackmail either.
Okay.
And the third point.
The third point addresses his death. After a, quote, thorough investigation, the FBI concluded Epstein died by suicide.
Right, and that specific conclusion, the suicide finding, that's probably going to get a lot of attention given all the public skepticism, the theories.
For sure. And the memo actually points out this conclusion is consistent with, well, several previous findings.
Oh, really? Like what?
Yeah, they mentioned the city's chief medical examiner, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan, and significantly, the DOJ's own Inspector General.
So multiple confirmations there.
Multiple official confirmations, yes. And they add something else, video footage.
Ah, the footage.
Yes. They say the conclusion is supported by video from the common area near his cell. The FBI did an independent review of it.
And what did that show?
It confirmed that from about 10:40 p.m. on August 9th, 2019, when he was locked in, until around 6:30 the next morning, absolutely nobody entered the tier where his cell was located.
Nobody in or out.
Correct. And CNN is reporting that 10 hours of that jailhouse security footage related to his death have actually been released now.
10 hours release. That does sound like pretty concrete evidence against, some of the foul play theories.
It seems intended to be.
But still, this official narrative, especially the part about the client list, feels quite different from what some officials were suggesting not that long ago. How does this square with those earlier statements?
That's where it gets really interesting. There's a definite contrast, particularly with statements made by Attorney General Pam Bondi earlier this year.
Right, I remember that. Back
Yeah.
in February 2025, she was on Fox News, wasn't she?
Exactly. And she said pretty explicitly that an Epstein client list was sitting on my desk right now to review. Big statement.
Huge. And didn't she also promise more? Something about a truckload of evidence.
She did. A truckload of previously withheld evidence handed over by the FBI. And she said, quote, everything is going to come out to the public. That definitely set expectations high.
Understandably, people were expecting bombshells.
And it went beyond just words. Around that same time, the administration actually invited some conservative internet figures to the White House.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, gave them binders labeled the Epstein Files, Phase 1, and declassified.
Okay, so they were actively trying to show they were releasing things.
Right. But the catch was, according to the sources we looked at, those documents mostly contained info that was already public.
So not the bombshells people were led to expect.
Apparently not. And sources say that actually angered parts of President Trump's base because it felt like a letdown after the buildup.
So you can see how this new memo, flatly stating no client list, directly contradicting Bondi. Well, you can see why that caused an immediate backlash.
Precisely. The reaction was swift. You had the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, and a DOJ spokesperson, Chad Gilmartin, trying to sort of reframe Bondi's earlier comments.
How they explain it.
They suggested she was referring to the entirety of all the paperwork, or, all of the paper related to Epstein's crimes, not necessarily a specific list.
A bit of semantic footwork there. Did that calm things down?
Not really. The online reaction, especially from certain circles, was pretty strong. People felt misled.
Like who? What were people saying?
Well, Elon Musk was posting memes asking kind of sarcastically, what time is it? Oh, look, it's no one has been arrested at o'clock again. Others, like Jack Posobiec, expressed dismay, saying, we were all told more was coming.
Right.
Yeah, and Alex Jones quipped something like, next, the DOJ will say, actually, Jeffrey Epstein never even existed. Laura Loomer even called for Bondi to resign, suggesting the timing of the memo release over a holiday weekend was deliberate.
Trying to bury it.
That was the accusation.
What's also interesting is the shift from some within the system, right? People who maybe previously hinted at doubts.
Yes, that's another layer. Figures like FBI Director Kash Patel and Deputy Director Dan Bongino, who had previously maybe questioned the official story on Epstein's death, they are now publicly stating he killed himself. Bongino reportedly said the jailhouse video is clear as day.
So they're aligning with the official finding now based on the video.
Seems so.
Yeah.
But even that shift has drawn criticism from conspiracy theorists who are now accusing them of changing their tune. It's complex.
It really is. So, okay, no client list found, no credible blackmail evidence. But what about all the other material? Bondi mentioned reviewing tens of thousands of recordings. What did this exhaustive review actually find?
All right, so the DOJ and FBI maintain they did this truly deep dive. Digital searches, databases, hard drives, networks, physical searches, cabinets, desks, closets, trying to locate everything.
Okay, and the results, specifically regarding videos or images.
This is a key point. The memo does confirm they possess more than 10,000 videos and images.
10,000, that's a lot.
It is. And officials describe this material as depicting child sex abuse material or other pornography. This seems to align with what Bondi hinted at, reviewing recordings involving children or child porn.
But wait, were Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell ever actually charged with possessing that kind of material?
That's a crucial distinction. No, they weren't. And multiple people involved in their criminal cases have stated they weren't aware of such a massive trove of recordings specifically.
So there's a bit of a disconnect there between the description and the charges filed?
There seems to be. However, there was a civil lawsuit filing that mentioned the Epstein estate discovering videos and pictures that could be child sex abuse material, but the details are under a court seal.
Ah, okay. So there's material, potentially very disturbing material, but maybe not exactly the type or context initially suggested, and details are limited by court order.
That seems to be the picture, yes. Lots of material, but specifics are protected or weren't part of the criminal charges brought.
Which leads to the next big question. They did this review, found over 10,000 images and videos. Why are they now saying nothing more will be released? That's bound to frustrate people wanting full transparency.
It is. The memo is very explicit on this point. No further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. Full stop.
And their reasoning.
The primary reason given is victim protection. They state there are more than 1,000 victims involved.
1,000 victims. Wow.
Yeah, and they say sensitive information about these victims' names, likenesses, descriptions, personal details is intertwined throughout the materials.
So releasing the material would inevitably expose victim information.
That's the argument. The memo stresses that combating child exploitation and getting justice for victims are top priorities and, quote, perpetuating unfounded theories about Epstein serves neither of those ends. They also add that much of this material was sealed by a court precisely to protect victims, and only a tiny fraction would likely have ever become public, even if Epstein had gone to trial.
So legal seals and victim protection are the main barriers cited for further release.
That's the official stance presented in the memo?
Okay, so let's try to sum this up. We started with promises, or at least strong suggestions, from the Attorney General about a client list, a truckload of evidence coming out.
Right. High expectations were set.
And now we have this definitive statement from the DOJ and FBI, based on their review, saying no client list found, no credible blackmail evidence found, and confirmation, backed by video review, that Epstein died by suicide.
Exactly. It's presented as the final word based on the evidence they possess. And they framed the decision not to release more as being driven by the need to protect the large number of victims involved.
It really underlines, for you listening, just how tricky it is to navigate these situations. You have official statements changing, public speculation running rampant, and then these definitive, but perhaps unsatisfying for some, conclusions.
It's a classic case of conflicting information streams and deeply entrenched narratives.
Absolutely. Which brings us to a final thought, something for you to consider. We see this intense public demand for transparency, especially in cases like Epstein's. People want answers, accountability.
Understandably so.
But then you have the Department of Justice citing very real concerns. Protecting victims, maintaining the integrity of sensitive materials, court orders. How can institutions realistically balance that intense public desire for openness with their stated obligations to protect vulnerable individuals and the legal process in these incredibly high-profile, sensitive cases?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Finding that balance seems incredibly difficult, especially when public trust is low.
Something to think about. How do you navigate that tightrope effectively?